The Zephyrian armada hung in Earth's orbit like vultures circling carrion, their crystalline ships gleaming with an otherworldly luminescence that made the stars themselves seem dim. Admiral Kexathara stood on the bridge of the flagship Dominion's edge, his 6 eyes fixed on the blue marble below with contempt that had been brewing for centuries. "Such a primitive world," he hissed to his second-in-command, Lieutenant Vosik. "Look at them, still bound to their pathetic rock, crawling around in the mud like the insects they are." The Zephyrians had ruled the galaxy for 3 millennia, their empire spanning across 47 star systems. They had crushed the maritime civilizations of Aquaticus Prime, reduced the aerial cities of the Nimbus Collective to floating debris, and conquered countless worlds. But Earth? Earth was supposed to be easy. Intelligence reports showed a species that barely managed to escape their own atmosphere, with most of their military force tied to ground-based operations. "Sir," Vosik reported, his translator converting his chittering language into standard galactic, "we're receiving transmissions from the surface." "They're surrendering already?" Kexthera's mandibles clicked in amusement. "Of course they are. Send the occupation force to their major population centers. Begin the harvest of their resources. This should be concluded within 1 solar rotation." What? The Zephyrians didn't know what their intelligence network had catastrophically failed to understand was that humanity's greatest warriors weren't on Earth at all. Colonel Sarah Chen floated in the observation deck of the Mars Colonial Defense Station, watching the distant blue dot that was her home through the reinforced viewport. The emergency beacon had reached them 6 hours ago. Earth under attack. Immediate assistance required. "Ma'am," came the voice of Sergeant Rodriguez over the comm. "The 7th Expeditionary Force is ready for deployment. The Lunar Defense Corps is moving into position, and the asteroid mining militias are armed and en route." Sarah smiled grimly. The Zephyrians had made their first mistake. They assumed Earth's military was confined to Earth itself. They had no idea that humanity had spread across the solar system like seeds in fertile ground, establishing not just colonies but entire military installations on every rock, moon, and space station they could reach. "And the others?" she asked. "Titan Heavy Artillery Division is powering up the orbital bombardment platforms. The Europa Deep Space Reconnaissance Unit has been tracking alien ship movements for the past week. The Ceres Mining Consortium has weaponized their asteroid haulers." Rodriguez paused. "Ma'am, we've got military assets they don't even know exist." The second mistake the Zephyrians made was underestimating human adaptability. While they had conquered worlds by overwhelming their atmospheric or oceanic forces, they had never faced a species that had learned to fight in the vacuum of space itself, not just with ships, but with infantry, artillery, and tactics developed in the harshest environment in the solar system. On Earth's surface, the initial Zephyrian assault had indeed been successful. Their energy weapons cut through conventional military hardware like a hot knife through butter. Major cities fell within hours. The aliens strutted through the streets of New York, London, and Tokyo with the confidence of conquerors who had done this dance 1,000 times before. But then the sky began to rain metal. The first wave came from the asteroid belt, repurposed mining charges that had been retrofitted with guidance systems, turning chunks of iron and nickel into kinetic weapons that struck with the force of nuclear bombs. The Zephyrian ships, designed for energy-based combat, were suddenly dealing with primitive but devastatingly effective projectiles moving at relativistic speeds. "What is this?" Kexathera shrieked as his flagship shuddered under the impact of a refrigerator-sized chunk of metal traveling at 40,000 kilometers per second. "Where are these attacks coming from?" His question was answered when the second wave arrived. The human veterans who had spent years fighting in zero gravity, learning to use micro-thrusters and mag boots to turn space itself into a battlefield. They came from the shadows of the moon, from the rings of Saturn, from hidden bases in the Kuiper Belt that the Zephyrian scouts had dismissed as irrelevant. Lieutenant Commander Jackson Ward led his squad through the hull breach of a Zephyrian cruiser, moving with the fluid grace of someone who had spent 5 years fighting pirates in the asteroid belt. His plasma cutter made short work of the ship's bulkheads, while his team advanced using tactics that no atmosphere-bound species could have conceived. "These aren't ground forces," his radio crackled with reports from across the fleet. "These are Void Warriors." The third and most crucial mistake the Zephyrians made was assuming that humanity's scattered colonial presence made them weaker. In reality, it had made them anti-fragile, a distributed military network that couldn't be destroyed by attacking any single point. When the Titan Artillery Division opened fire, it wasn't with conventional weapons. They had been mining helium-3 for fusion reactors. But under combat conditions, those same reactors became fusion bombs that could be precisely delivered across interplanetary distances. The Zephyrians watched in horror as their rear guard was systematically eliminated by weapons fired from Saturn's largest moon. Admiral Kexathara realized too late that they weren't fighting a planetary defense force. They were fighting an interplanetary empire that had disguised itself as a collection of scattered colonies. Every human outpost was a military base. Every mining operation was a potential weapons factory. Every research station was an intelligence gathering post that had been watching and preparing for exactly this moment. "Sir," Vossick's voice was high with panic. "We've lost 60% of the fleet. The humans, they're not just on their homeworld. They're everywhere." The final blow came from an unexpected direction entirely. The Europa Deep Space Reconnaissance Unit had spent months tracking the Zephyrian fleet's approach, mapping their supply lines, and identifying their home base. As Admiral Kexathara struggled to coordinate a retreat from the nightmare that Earth had become, he received word that human forces had struck Zephyrian logistical centers 3 star systems away. Somehow, this species that could barely leave their own atmosphere had developed faster-than-light strike capabilities that his intelligence network had never detected. In the aftermath, as the surviving Zephyrian ships limped away from the solar system, Admiral Kexathara filed his report with bitter understanding. The humans hadn't been confined to their homeworld surface. They had been hiding in plain sight throughout their entire solar system, building a military infrastructure that spanned millions of cubic kilometers of space. They had mistaken humanity's apparent weakness for actual weakness, not understanding that a species crazy enough to live and fight in the void of space was not a species to be underestimated. The ground forces on Earth had been a decoy. The real military had been waiting in the dark between the worlds, patient as death itself. And now the galaxy would learn what the Zephyrians had learned too late. Never underestimate a species that calls the infinite darkness of space its home.